This is Zambia at 58. We are here at the Chilenje National Monument, commonly known as Old State House. Join me as I talk to Sheila Chaila, who is the site manager here at the National Monument. My name is Amos Zulu. Stay tuned.
This house was declared a national monument in 1968 because of the role that it played towards Zambia's independence. So Dr. Kaunda living here was, the house in short was the residence of the president, but then the value of this place lies in the period that his living here was associated with, because in the late 50s and early 60s, Zambia's liberation struggle was at the climax. It was at its peak. And a lot of things happened during the period that Dr. Kaunda lived here. I must mention before I go further that Dr. Kaunda actually came to Chilenje around 1953, and he lived in another house which is near the vicinity of this monument, house number 257. It's also quite an important house because if you read Zambia's history, he was arrested from that house in 1955 by the colonial government for distributing what they called subversive materials, which were more or less, political literature, during the fight for independence. So he was arrested from that house. So from house number 257, Dr. Kaunda then moved to this house, 394, which was actually bigger than the 257. So house number 257, had more or less 3 rooms. It did not even have a kitchen. I remember it is documented in one of Dr. Kaunda's books how Mama Betty always complained about the smallness of the house, and whenever the freedom fighters would come to have meetings, even here in this house, they would have to remove furniture, put it outside, just to accommodate a number of people for them to meet. And also, the 257 had a leaking roof, according to the book that I read. It's so interesting. And so life was quite hard in those days. But in 1960, after Dr. Kaunda's release from prison, he came and moved into this house, house number 394, which is a declared national monument now. So going back to what I was saying, the importance of this house. Firstly, obviously, a lot of meetings took place here where freedom fighters could come and meet and discuss, ways and means of helping Zambia to attain independence. Other than that, the period that he lived here, a number of things happened. I'll give context to what happened during that time. So 1959, Dr. Kaunda ZANC, the Zambia African National Congress, was banned, in March, on 8th March to be exact. And Dr. Kaunda and I know Haimanga Nkumbula and a few others were arrested and taken to different parts of the country. And it was quite a difficult time for the movement. But there were others, obviously, who took over the reins, like Maenza Chona, who later on in 1959, with others, formed UNIP, the United National Independence Party, in October of 1959, while Dr. Kaunda was in prison. So in January 1960, when he was released, he assumed the role of UNIP presidency. And that is the time that he moved into this house on 13th January in 1960. So that was what was happening around that time. Another thing that you can look at is, that was the period Zambia was in a federation. Obviously, Zambia was called Northern Rhodesia. Northern Rhodesia, Southern Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe, and Nyasaland. These 3 territories were amalgamated by the British into one federation. And that is one of the things that the nationalists or the freedom fighters really fought against. The Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland is something that, as Northern Rhodesians and or peoples of these territories actually fought against, especially us as Northern Rhodesia. And so that federation had come into effect in 1953. So by the time Dr. Kaunda was living in Chilenje, and that was the period of the federation, and a lot of meetings, there was a lot of things that were happening, the nationalists in trying to fight that federation, to dismantle that federation. So because of that, you have, for instance, also the Chachacha campaigns, the Chachacha movement, as it is called, in 1961. That took place while Dr. Kaunda lived here, which was a civil disobedience movement, and it consisted of things like arson, there was blocking of roads, there were protests. So all this was done to just sort of show the colonial government that people were not happy, people wanted their independence. And this movement was spearheaded by the freedom fighters, including Dr. Kenneth Kaunda.
So Chilenje used to be a hive of political activity before Zambia's independence, and the structure you are seeing behind me was an office for the African National Congress, ANC, right here in Mapoloto in Chilenje.
Chilenje as a township also played a very crucial role in Zambia's liberation. It was quite like Matero. It was one of those townships where, the movement, the independence movement was quite active, and a lot of freedom fighters lived in this township. You had the likes of Mr. Harry Mwangankumbola. I believe Mr. Simon Mwanzakapwepe lived here at one time. Dr. Kaunda lived here in this township. So, and many other freedom fighters, as well as the ordinary Zambian who was also involved in the fight for independence, So Chilenje was quite active, and there were a lot of meetings that took place here. We had the ANC office in an area called Mapoloto, which is just behind this monument. The ANC office was based there. And so it was a hype of activity during this period that Dr. Kaunda lived in Chilenje.
I caught up with Miss Margaret Kandela and her colleague Godfrida Lukonde, both of Mapoloto area in Chilenje, and they share their independence memories.
Standard 5 nombe sikulu mulandu wakuti bamubaola baleisa kumushi lero nga baisa kumushi kude babiri babutu bafikira pasikulu epotwali twamuna tini bamubaola bale nkule emyefu kukanwa y'abantu wafuma musikulu wafyuka.
When we were fighting for independence, I was in grade 5, which was then Standard 5. So the whites could come to our schools and we would know that they have come to mistreat us. Because I was very good at athletics, I would sneak out of class and quickly go to alert people in the village.
Ukwate chifwani ukula na mputa mube kirini no mukanda mwalimba musebo
They would make us construct toilets, roads, and ensure that we clean all the surroundings. And if one did not follow that, they would send that person to Milima prison in Kasama. During the struggle for independence, our oppressors was using guns while we used stones, but we still managed to defeat them. So what we would do is dig pit traps along the roads and cover them with grass to trap their vehicles. We suffered a lot because we would sleep in the bush and we would risk our lives because it wasn't safe. Dr. Kaunda was imprisoned for many years, but that did not stop us from fighting until the day we got our independence on 24th October 1964. This is one of the songs that we used to sing.
Inompanga yabafita fititi intulesa tupele amabunu nayo kutumpa pakabwe mukuba onse bayimba batwalira abana babo abana besu balichula aleni ba mwana ma ukumfa na kulinga inompanga yabafita fititi intulesa tupele chibemba chali sosele paka kabuchira kambushimayo kasengula pokepele wewafuatika ibukisha efotwale imba nishipantu ifitupa fida kwalebo kufuatika unga waisa muno mutauni kwalebe chipekeni uye ulembeshe kule ishitayo benga yafika kulalala mumpanga ngata ukwete chitupa nishitapali au twalichulile pakero twapukele chalo chesu twasansamuka twalumba na bakaunda twati mwabombeni tata pakuteke chalo mwatulubula au twalichulile mwandini fyalo nomba fyalishinja nomba twaisa kubana banono fira chali pano kale nomba nachichiramo abana banono tabakweti obwikalo olwasambilile takwete alipuisha esukulu ukwakutia itakulia bakumwafu moneni balepepa fifya balepepa infolo shirisha kutinga na abakolwa bale shipula fi bale ivira banyina bomanda bale samutishitisha mulando wakupelwa amano abafyashi batitwalibika kwa amano nomba abana nabatupesha kali apa akomoko bokotabakwete ubupopu namufula au mwandini chali kupapusha bintu bakaunda bapokele chalo au chali cha mtembe chalo cha ichisuma chanda tieni tuikatane tukwate amano.
When it comes to the younger generation, as compared to ours, there's a very big difference. I see young people drinking from morning to night, and most of them cannot even provide for their families. It is different from Dr. Kaunda's time because young people were hard workers. As we celebrate this independence, let us hold hands and keep our children safe, and let us not shed blood because we have been liberated. Just like the way Dr. Kaunda used to do it. One Zambia, one nation. He is the one that brought about all those things. Dr. Kaunda was against buying and selling of goods through the window, and that's when independence came about. And the whites got scared, and they ran to their countries. May the current leaders do continue doing all the good things that Dr. Kaunda was doing.
The 2022 Independence Day theme is promoting inclusiveness towards a sustainable social and economic recovery.